Hello and welcome to the lecture. So let's start with the dynamic actions with a more advanced concept. And if you remember, going to a dynamic action, you will be having events, right? And all these things is just a browser events, and that will be very easy to understand because that's with respect to some JavaScript side, and it's very meaningful to get that when you click or change, and we'll come back to this later on. But many of you are not sure of this, this framework events or component events. These are with respect to Oracle APIs only, and these are very special to this, and we'll discuss more on that. And we will start with the after refresh here, then we'll go to the same thing before submit and dialog closed. We will go with that, and this framework events are not much used, but mostly the dialog closed is the one that mostly used, but we will go through everything for a good understanding. So before that, we are in this page where you can see the store ID and all that list, and which opens the model of that selected store. And now we will try to create an interactive grid to understand about the refresh there, that which is the after refresh as well as the before refresh. So we'll create an interactive grid region. So in this content body, I'm creating a region. We will go with the same stores, and let me just copy that query which I used in that model dialog, so I can use the same. And I'm going to this, so we will use an interactive grid, right? So I'm selecting here with an interactive grid, and I'm going to use the SQL query. So I'll paste that, and I will validate it. Yeah, that's fine. So we are gonna make it to editable. So going to this attributes, you can see that we have to enable it, and even we'll make lazy loading as well, and we will do all the operations. And adding to that, we need to define a primary key as well when we are editing. So going to the store ID, and I will make this as the primary key. So we'll save it, and we'll run this, and we are getting an interactive grid. So what this thing is, I'll add a new row, and I will try to refresh this, this select list. So that's the main thing. So we need to add one more dynamic action, and before that we'll add a button. We are refresh button that will refresh this. Whenever a new row is added, we'll try to explicitly refresh. So we'll add a button here, that with the name refresh, and this would be having a dynamic action. So I'll give refresh click, and here you can do the refresh thing. So this, what it does is it will try to refresh the query. So this select list has an inbuilt query, right? So this will try to refresh that query whenever you are trying to refresh that, make the action on the refresh. And the more importantly, we need to select the affected elements to the page item which we are trying to refresh, that is the P2 store ID, if you remember. And we will save it. We will try to see the button. Okay, we are having the refresh thing here, so it's refreshing fine. So now we will add a row here that would be having a store ID more than 24, and it's unique, that's why. So we'll add a row with 24, and let me add a thing. So this would, and physical address we'll just add www.amazon.com. So I'll add this, and I will save this. Yeah, those are saved. So this store ID is having a Beijing and the list which are old. One more row is added, so I will try to refresh this. So it's refreshed, the query is refreshed, and as you can see, since it is sorted, we are getting the Amazon as the first one, starting from A to Z. So that's the thing. So this purpose of refresh. And what is about the after refresh? That is what we need to learn it. So we'll try to add one more button there. So we will try to create one more dynamic action there that will be showing with after refresh. So we'll add one more dynamic action. We'll add simply after refresh basically. So maybe we'll add refresh. We are gonna do both, and we will try to select this after refresh. And here the most important, so which is gonna be refreshing. So our case is that the items, so we're gonna select that item, and more importantly we need to see what needs to be done once it is refreshed. So we need to create a true action. So here I will select the JavaScript code, and I will try to add a alert. Maybe it will be after refresh. Okay, so we'll just finish that with this, and hope you know that alert will be giving a message if I try to execute this in console. This will be just alerting me with this from the browser side. So that's what this alert does. If you are new to JavaScript, just I'm telling. So this would be triggered. We'll just make it to after refresh itself, and I'm saving again and refreshing it. So if I click on refresh, so you can see that it's showing me after refresh. So that's the thing. So once you're refreshing one thing and you need to do something after that is refreshed, maybe you want to hide something, maybe, or you want to show something. That's what the thing is. So if you want to see for before refresh, we'll duplicate this, we will duplicate this dynamic action, and we'll just change this to before, and this would be before refresh. So we'll see the difference there. So when it is, the spinner is coming before that, it will try to execute, and if it is after that, it will try to execute that one. So this is what, so mostly we will be using this thing, right? So let me check this. So it's before it's about to refresh this one. So once it is refreshed, this one. So this is the purpose of this before and after refresh. Mostly when you're having lots of data to be fetched for this kind of select list or some pop-up LOV, you wanna do something in the between. So before refresh and after refresh, maybe you want to hide that. Maybe you can take a more practical example, like we are just for a case, this is you don't want to open the button, don't want to show the open model, and even this should be show after. We want to show first with after, and we want to hide that button when we want to refresh that. So in that case, this would be handy in some practical way, I'm telling. So we are gonna hide it when we are trying to refresh, and we are gonna show it once it is refreshed. So in the between process, the button will be hidden. So that's the main key. So it has the fire on initialization by yes, that's the case. So let's turn it off for here and that. So it's trying to execute on page load, that's the thing. So I'll just refresh it, and we have the model here. So when we are trying to refresh it, this would be hidden. So meaning that something is trying to load, we don't want to show this button. So that's the thing. So because this opens a model that is selected, so I don't want to show when it's loading. So if I try to refresh, you can see that it's getting hidden, and it's shown once it is loaded. So that's the purpose of the thing. So this is where we are having some applications over this, for this event. So that's the main thing here. And also you can also do with respect to the spinner, you can add some other messages as well. You can show like please wait, and then once it is refreshed you can hide that message. In that way you can do that. So that's the thing. And now we will go with the next one, that is about the before submit, which we have seen. And this we will try to use this event in the model page here. So we will try to add a button that will try to submit this thing which we are gonna see. So let's create a dynamic action. I will try to use before page submit. And also we need to add a process, right? So we need to add a process that will use the automatic form DML, right? So it will do all the DML based on the form automatic row processing, because we have a form initialization here. So it will automatically take in the source and it will update to that source table with the region source as the target. So I'm selecting the region. So we'll do an update operation. So what this was doing, if we go into the dynamic action, which is in pending side, so we'll select the before page submit. So before the page is gonna be submitting, so we have to do something. So maybe we have to show a message or something. Maybe we have a alert here by default, like provided by Oracle alert. This will show the APIs based alert. You can write this may take time. Okay, and once this thing is done, we will have a OK button. Once you press OK, then it will try to insert that. So we will go to this thing and we'll create a button, and I will just use update, and this button will have the submit page. That's important because that's where the submitting action comes. And also you can define the thing for the form, right? So it should be a database action as update, SQL update. So I'm saving it. So if you open, I would write store name. Maybe I'll save this to amazon.in and I'll try to update this. So it's showing me this may take time. And yeah, this is not synchronous. Yeah, because this is just before submitting you wanted to show some kind of information to the user. In that case you can use it. We have a case, right? So before it is about to close the model, maybe we'll have to show some message to the user. We'll create a process that will close the dialog. So we have a closed dialog here, right? So this will be closing once this is process is success. So just give close dialog, and I will just go to this dynamic actions. We will write a thing. The dialog will be closed after successful operation, after successful updation. Okay, we are gonna see this. So we'll just check whether this is updated by using the refresh here. We can check it, refresh row, and you can see that amazon.in came here. So we'll open again and we will change it to amazon.com, and we'll try to update here. So we'll see that the dialog will be closed after successful updation. This kind of messages you can do it before the page is about to submit. If it is failure, it will stop it for sure. That you can check as well. So this is about that case. So where it's not much use, just for for understanding, I'm just shown in this lecture. And also one more thing is we need to have another important thing, that is the after the dialog is closed. That is very important here. So what this is about, this dialog closed is, it should be handled in the parent page only. So whenever we are closing the dialog, we need to handle it some kind of that opens the model, right? Opens the model once the dialog gets closed. So we have to trigger some action once it is closed, because that is open from the parent. So this open model is a parent page component. So when you click that, it is opening that model. So once this is closed, you need to do something on this page, right? So that is the purpose of this after close thing. So we'll create one more dynamic action, like we'll create here the dynamic action, and we'll select after closed, dialog closed. Yeah, so we will select the we are gonna select the complete document. I will come back to this later on, what needs to be done. We are gonna select the complete document because the parent page is a complete document, right? And we'll go to here, and what we'll do is, once this is closed, the dialog is closed, we'll try to refresh this grid. So I'm gonna add this message, meaningful message here for better tracking, and then I will refresh this with the region, that is the grid stores, and I'm saving this, and we'll refresh that. Now we will open the model dialog, and we will try to select Amazon. We'll select this, and we'll try to use Amazon.in, and yeah, so we'll update this. So seems there's nothing has changed here. Why? Because we don't have a triggering element for this model dialog. So let me demonstrate with a better example here. This is very important. So let me create a button for a better understanding. So if I try to create a button, and that would be test model or something, and that would redirect to the same page which I wanted. So this page which is page 3, and I'm gonna set the store ID to the value which is Amazon, that's 24. So I'm gonna click OK and save. So it's saved, and let me refresh this. So if I click on this test model, it's gonna take me the Amazon value, and this time I will just try to use this amazon.com and try to update. It is refreshing now, but not with the model which we opened with respect to prepare URL. So what the thing is, by default, if you are trying to redirect with this redirection thing, it automatically adds the triggering element source when the model is open. But when you are adding this open model, which we have seen, we have added through this prepare URL, we have to add one more element thing. So that's about the triggering element. So the triggering element would be a jQuery selector, if you can remember the jQuery here, and that should be the button that is clicked. So in our case, it's the open model, and if we inspect and see what's the ID here, so it is having some random ID here. Maybe we have to give the static ID, so I just have to go to the open model. So let me copy this, and I will give the static ID. Maybe it starts with s underscore. For a differentiation you can. So I'm just saving this, and I will refresh this. So now if I inspect, and you can see it's highlighted here, that's the s underscore open model. So let me copy this, and I will try to use the jQuery selector, that is the $off, and it's an ID, right? So it should be ash, pasting it, and this would be selecting that element what we have seen that corresponds to this one. So we have to use this as a triggering element that has for this AJAX or the PL SQL, we have parameter that is with respect to triggering element, user codes, Hope this would be fine. So this would be preparing URL with the triggering element now, which will be added through the script. If you remember the apex.navigation.dialog. So I'm refreshing this, and now if we open this, we are opening with the triggering element now, and we will try to change the one which we already have to use our amazon.in again and update it, and now it's getting refreshed. So because of the triggering element, it's happening. And there's one more thing that's need to be done here, and that is with respect to the jQuery selector. So I suggest you to use the jQuery selector as the with respect to that selected triggering element only. When you have a lot of buttons there that is opening various model dialogs, suppose model dialog 1 is opened, and if you are closing that will correspond to the old one which we have selected, the document. So document will be listening to the every model dialog which is opened from that page. So I suggest you to use that particular element which is triggering that model dialog. So in that way you can handle well. And there are cases you can get into with the if you are passing some data, you can also capture that as well. So we'll go to that as next one. So we are gonna select this to need not put the $off sign. We can just use the #s_model. So I'm deleting this part, and this will be s_model. It should be because it's need to differentiate with respect to ID. And if we try to go again with open model, and we will see that we can now change, and the same thing would be updated and refreshed in our page. So this is about that. This is the best way to implement the jQuery selector here, and the same using the prepare URL we'll be using as the triggering element. So this is the best practice. And then we have one more thing to be done here that's mostly used when you're just passing the data. So here we are trying to refresh, right? We'll add one more action, and we'll try to execute the server side JavaScript, and I'm gonna print this object that would be written. So this will have a lot of things, especially the data. So we are gonna print this .data, that is the case which we're gonna see. So before printing that, let me just we can return a dialog to the parent page from model page. So here we have the option there, items to return. So let me return 2 or 3 items. So let me return the store ID and the store name, and we'll close that. And now if we go to this, and we'll try to see what it is printing. Once you close the dialog, we have to see that printing step, which is this .data. So let me refresh it, and I'll open the console, and I will clear this and open the model. So we'll go with our example. I'll just take the Amazon and open the model. It's just that I don't want to modify the existing data, that's why I am sticking to Amazon. So I'm just changing it to amazon.in again. So we have to get this .data once you close it, because this executes the once you close, it executes the refresh which we saw earlier, and as well as this code. So I'm closing the dialog, and here you can see that this prints this .data. And maybe I have to refresh the page. Well, at times may not see the sources, that's fine, but you can understand this points to that particular line, I'm sure, because this is a new thing that will be printed from closing the dialog. This .data that would be returning an object key with a page item name, and the value will be that value which is written from the model dialog, and that would be the same another element with the another key and that value, as well as the page ID which is closed. In our case, the page ID is 3. So these 3 important things will be written, that will be very useful, right? So if you want to get what the user is performing that model dialog, and you need to return that page item specifically, and also we can handle that for our parent page, so with that value. So that will be very useful. Now maybe you want to show that message to the end user. Store ID Amazon has been updated to amazon.com. If you want to show in that way, you can show it. Maybe if you want to check that, we will try to add that in our case. So we'll just use alert and we'll try to add a string, the store ID, that would be this dot data dot p3 store ID is what, if you remember, this was an object representation, this dot data dot p3 store ID, and we'll be concatenating again, and we will write a string has been. You can also use template literal, it has the modern ES6 as well, this Oracle APIs. So we have to write the next one, this dot data to then p3 store name. We'll just try to update our Amazon name to some other name. So if I select this to Amazon and open model, so I'll just change it to Walmart. So we'll see that now. So yeah, missed the space there, but in that way you can show what you want. The store ID 24 has been updated to Walmart. So you can see that this line is printed with the updated value, and this is now it is showing me the sources. So these are wrapped inside a function, inside that dynamic action, where you have the logic there. So that's how it is done. So we can see that code we have written here. So this is the main application of this, and for the model dialog, that's very useful. And also we have the page ID, that's a dialog page ID. If you want to differentiate, suppose in case that this button has to open two pages, maybe a page that will be used to create a store and one page for updation in some different way or different pages in an example. So while closing, the same button will be triggered with that event, right? So it will triggering the same event every time when it is closed, but we don't want for one page, that page with the button opened, another case. So in that case, we have to differentiate our logic with the JavaScript code, and we have to write the if statement. If this dot data dot dialog page ID equal to 3, then do this. So that's the purpose of this dialog page ID, and it's very useful when it's returned by the Oracle APIs automatically. So this is our practical case, and I hope you got the brief understanding of this framework events, which is with respect to Oracle APIs alone. And it's very useful. One is the dialog close will be most used because model dialogs has been very much used. And the next lecture we'll see about the component events.